Morning everyone, this is Diane Murray at Southern Art Gallery. Today we are working on a painting of a painting that I did a number of years ago for a class that I am teaching, a master class. So we are doing our sketch, and I have basically just lightly drawn in the shapes. And now I'm just going in and refining the shapes a little bit. If you're new to drawing, this is a wonderful little device that might be very helpful for you. It helps me. I use it all the time. And basically what you do is you get the basic size. If you're doing life size, which means that you're drawing the same thing, the same size that your subject matter is. If you take and you measure, it's just a quick way to measure, to check your measurements to be sure that everything is what you want it to be. This is called a prospect. They're very inexpensive, and it really helps you to train your eye to adjust sizes, to check the sizes of things, various things in your subject matter, which really matters when you're doing portraits. And in this master class, we are starting from the very beginning, and we're working on refining our techniques and how we progress in our paintings. So it's real important to know how to start a painting. So if you're not comfortable drawing, you can always trace your subject matter. You can always trace it with a light box or whatever method you choose to use it. I'm drawing with a Derwent sketching wash pencil, because I'll show you in a minute the reason we're doing that. Because since this is just a rough sketch of what we're going to draw, I also use a kneaded eraser, and I am not a great draftsman. I'll just tell you right now, I'm lazy, and if the opportunity to trace presents itself, I usually do that because I'm lazy. But I'm trying to get better at drawing, so it's always good for me to try to do these things. So basically I'm just darkening the lines here because I watch the shapes. I am just recreating the shapes that I see here. And then cleaning up the edges a little bit. I'm sorry, that's my bird. He's noisy today. So paying attention to the shapes of everything here. And cleaning up these edges a little bit. But if you're more comfortable just tracing, that's fine. Do whatever you are comfortable doing. The purpose of this class this isn't a drawing class, so we're not really trying to learn to draw. The purpose of this particular exercise is we are painting in watercolor, and then we're going to do the same painting in oil. And the reason for that is because I have students who are very interested in oil, but primarily the reason is you can learn so much from other mediums, from painting in other mediums. It will help your watercolors. And I'm just adding some basic lines in here that define the shapes, the forms a little bit. Okay, that just stops right there. Okay, so if I wanted to add some shadows to this, we wanted to say show where these shadows are. Soften these lines a little bit. I think we would do better with a flat brush actually for this. So let's try a flat brush here and see these shadows, where they're coming in, and where we want to make these shadows appear. So this is like doing a value study, basically. But you're just using pencils. So this is kind of fun. So we're just basically creating form by paying attention to where the shadows are. That should have, that's down here. This should have been a little fatter right there, but that's okay. The great thing about botanicals is you have a lot of leeway here to make mistakes, to change things, to do whatever you want. You don't want to outline each leaf, but we do want a sense of where the darks are going to be. Because as I said, we will be doing this in oil, so it's good to pay attention to these things. I have a very dark area in here. Ooh, I don't know why my bird's so active today. And this goes behind, so we want to push this behind here and give it some form. And this just has some form in here, so we'll just kind of just lightly do that. This is very dark in here, so we'll darken that whole thing. There's a nice shadow under here and here, and this edge is pretty dark here. So I'm just paying attention to where I see the darks, and this is just a road map for later, so I can see which leaf goes behind and which leaf is in front, is basically all we're doing here with this. We're pushing these leaves behind. Okay, I want to push this one back a little bit. Just a fast, easy way to do this. You could just as easily do this with paint. Just darken some of these lines. We do have a center line here that looks important. And it's always going to be dark up under here. This is all dark. All right. That probably gives me enough information to transfer this. Now this, I did this on paper that's not watercolor paper, so as you can see, it's buckling a little bit, but that's fine. We don't really mind that. Now, if I wanted to make things darker, I could go over this for my darkest darks, which I think I would probably wait, truthfully, for this to dry, but because we're trying to get this in, I would go in and do this and just define the darkest areas here. You could do this just as easily with a brush, the pointed brush. I just want to make this a little darker there. And we've got some lines that come in here. This is a beautiful it actually does that. It goes like this to a point. So this is all dark in here. Now if I wanted to just shade this in, I could also do it this way. I could just shade in these really dark areas with a regular pencil. I mean, I don't have to have this fancy little pencil. It's just something fun to play with. And shade all this in, just showing me where the darks are. So the nice thing about the pencil is if I do shade it in like that, just a little harder pressure there. And this is kind of rounded a little straighter there. This edge is a little stronger. Got some dark right here. There is, this actually is not correct. That should have been, So see, that's where you check in your drawing. So this should have been actually more like this. And then we'll just put another, this behind here like that. I like that better. Okay, and then we've always got the dark in between the leaves. It's always dark. And then you've got this beautiful edge on an artichoke. That's really dark. And I'm just watching what I'm seeing here. Just refining, refining, refining. But when you start out with your drawing, start out very tentatively and lightly so that it's easy to make changes. Otherwise, it's going to be a little harder to do. And I'm just using the pencil now to shade in. So this is how you would do your value study. Trying to get your values as correct as possible because that's really important. Got a really dark area here. And we've got some dark in here. And our edges are always going to be defined when we do our all right, I'm liking that better. We have an edge that's lighter there. So paying attention to all the light edges as well as the dark edges. That's really important. So when you do a value study, 3 values are enough. You don't really have to have a lot of values because then you're probably going to be more confused. So just give yourself 3 values and you'll be fine. So a medium value and your darkest dark, of course. So always identify your darkest darks early on. It's really important. I'll change that shape a little bit, but that's okay. Might make that a little taller. And that should have come up higher, more like that. We'll see if we can correct that. Great thing about these little pencils is even though they're water soluble, you can still erase until, of course, you add the water and then you can't erase. So that's better. I like that better. Just want that pretty curve right there. Okay, so this we have a mid-tone. So if you just have a mid-tone, a darkest dark, and a lightest light, you can pretty much tell what's going on here. And I'm getting carried away when I draw. I do get carried away, so I have to stop myself because this is not about drawing. So there's your artichoke. If you don't want to do all this, of course, tracing will be available. All right, and you can just, if you don't want to use water, you can just use your finger also. So get yourself some nice drawing pencils and play around with that. It will really help you ultimately in your art. My favorite drawing pencils are actually woodless pencils. This is the mechanical pencils I usually use. As you can see, let me see if I can show you this. They actually have a very thick lead. I can't remember the size of the lead, but if you just go to Office Depot, you can find them there in the pencil section. They have I find it easier to work with them, with the thicker lead. So again, if I wanted to use the water, it'd be easy to do. Just to blend all this a bit. Now I'm not saying go out and buy all these things. You really don't need to buy everything that people suggest, truthfully. But if you want to play around, these are really fun to play with. Okay, so that's good enough for me to get started. That's my value study. We'll transfer this to our watercolor paper and start the watercolor.